Isn't it fun when the technology works? All right, it is the top of the hour. So thank you for joining. This is my very first live stream. So for those of you letting me join you during your lunch hour, thank you. I am honored to be a part of your lunch. And for those of you in other time zones, again, thrilled to have you here. I get asked a lot of questions about this particular topic, which is why I decided to do a whole live series on this. And of course, the topic is the seven gatekeepers that are holding you back from a promotion and you don't even know it. So I synonymously use gatekeepers and silent tests because the fact of the matter is, executives are talking about these seven things and you don't even know it. And so I want to really bring this to light so that you can take this information and use it today to position yourself the way you want to be positioned. I want you to be able to take control and show up the way that you intend to. So, for those of you new to my world, thank you. So, I have over 20 years of executive experience in the Fortune 500 world. So, I myself climbed the ladder from admin assistant to senior vice president and head of HR. So, I have been there. I've been in the trenches. I've experienced that frustration of having no idea what's holding me back. I sat at that director level for a long time. Um, until I cracked the code a little bit. I'm a natural observer of people and of patterns. And of course, I was in HR. So I had this front row seat to watch some leaders seemingly effortlessly climb up the ladder. And I observed what they were doing that was different than me. And what it boiled down to is intentionality. These leaders were incredibly intentional about what they were doing. And so I have now made it my professional mission to bring this to as many high performing leaders as possible. I actually created a framework called the momentum method that is built all around this because some people do this naturally and they're the lucky ones who seem to move quickly. The rest of us just need to be let in on the little secrets. So, like I said, I'm a full-time executive coach today. I work with private clients. I'm about to launch a group, a transformational cohort, which I'm really excited about. High achieving leaders from all over the globe who are coming together to learn this as a cohort. So that's pretty cool. So, bottom line, there is a rule book to how to play in corporate. And I know politics bristles everybody the wrong way. And I get it because we've all seen the dirty politics, the sharp elbows, um, low integrity ways of working. That's not what I'm talking about. When I talk about politics, I'm talking about how are you intentionally positioning yourself in your environment to make sure that the conversations happening about you behind closed doors are the conversations that you want them to be talking about. So there is a way to control the narrative here, and it's all about perception. So, um, in my 20 or so years, as a senior exec in HR, I was in hundreds of rooms with executive leadership teams talking about who was going to get promoted, talking about succession planning, and who we wanted on the bench for roles as they opened up. And there are consistent filters that we used in every meeting. And again, this wasn't a written framework, this wasn't a rubric, but it was the undertone of what we were talking about. And that's where these seven gatekeepers came from, because these are the seven most common pitfalls that I saw really strong leaders just missing the mark on. And again, they didn't know it. These aren't things that you get coached around unless you have a really, really good mentor. Most of us don't. We're on our own out there. So these seven silent tests, they're unspoken criteria. And so in this live series, I'm going to go through each one of the seven. So every week, I'm going to deep dive into one of the seven. Um, so let's dive in. So today's focus, the first silent test, the first gatekeeper that I want to talk about is something that I call the sponsorship requirement. Okay. For you to get an executive level promotion, you have to have a sponsor. And I want to talk about what a sponsor is, because a sponsor is not a mentor. And this is something new for a lot of people. I get a lot of questions about this. And by the way, if you are joining on YouTube or on um, LinkedIn, feel free to put a chat or a question in the chat, because I'll be looking at that later. I want to make sure I cover all the questions. I want to make sure you really understand what I'm talking about, because this is new information for a lot of people. So the sponsorship requirement, what am I talking about? When executive teams are in the room talking about promotion decisions, there has to be, again, this is kind of an unspoken rule, but there has to be somebody with clout in the room at that table who is advocating for you. Okay. And that's what a sponsor is. A lot of people mistakenly think their manager is the one controlling their promotion. But as you move into the executive ranks, your manager likely is not the one deciding that. They more often, most often, they don't have that authority. So when we talk about sponsors, we're talking about senior level influential people in the organization. The difference between a sponsor and a mentor. This is the question I get a lot. A mentor is somebody who is usually more experienced than you in whatever domain you're getting mentoring in. And they are there to offer you guidance, right? To give you advice. Sometimes it's a formal arrangement. A lot of companies have mentorship programs where they'll pair you with a mentor, but the explicit expectation in a mentor mentee relationship is guidance and it's development. Ideally, they're giving you feedback. Ideally, they're saying, "Hey, here's what you should sharpen. Here's what you need to toggle back on." That's a great mentor. Ideally, they're helping you build your network. So they understand where you want to go, and a mentor is going to help connect you to the right people. That's amazing, and you should have a mentor, ideally more than one. When I talk about a sponsor, it's a very different thing because it's unspoken, right? So there is never a situation where it's like, "Hey, Courtney, I'm going to be your sponsor." That was never something that was expressed to me directly, and I know I had sponsors throughout my career, and that's how I was able to move into the seats I was able to move into. A sponsor is a senior level influential leader in your organization. This is somebody whose voice matters. Sometimes this is somebody whose seat on an org chart is senior. Maybe it's your boss's boss. Maybe it is a, peer to your boss's boss, somebody who's at the table. But sometimes sponsors are not necessarily, at the C-suite. Sometimes they are just those influential people in the organization whose voices matter. And so this is where your to do is to think about your own particular organization and who are those voices? Who are the leaders listening to? So you've got to figure out in your ecosystem, who would you love advocating for you behind closed doors? Who do you want to sponsor you? Again, this is all silent, it's unwritten, but who do you want to make sure knows something about you so that they can then advocate for you behind closed doors in the rooms that they're in where you're being discussed? Because if you're a strong performer, and most of the folks in my world are really strong performers, you're already being discussed behind closed doors. Okay, so the conversation about you is happening. What I want to help you do is make sure that that conversation about you is you positioned in the best way possible. So promotions, at the end of the day, it's a risk decision for a leadership team. They're taking a bet on whoever it is that they are tapping for the promotion. And this is why a sponsor is critical, because picking somebody for an executive level is a bit of a risk, right? None of us have done the role before we actually get the promotion. So you have to have people vouching for you, because the other thing that a lot of executives are worried about is their own reputation. So if they're going to vouch for you, they need to make sure that someone else around the table agrees that you're great and you're not going to let them down, and it's not going to be the wrong decision to promote you. So I hope that makes sense. And again, feel free to put a question or comment in the chat if there's any confusion. Again, mentor is more of a formal relationship. This is somebody who you're looking to for advice, and a sponsor is somebody who is influential, who is senior, somebody who is in the conversations behind closed doors, who you want advocating for you. So how do you do this? Okay, so first, you've got to decide who are the sponsors in your organization. There are a lot of them, especially in large organizations. Think about the people who are in the room behind closed doors, and typically it's the heads of the divisions. So it's going to be, the head of IT, the head of sales, the head of ops. So think about just your ecosystem and who are those exec leaders. Then I want you to think about, who do you have natural proximity to? So I was the head of HR for an IT division for a while. So I partnered with the CIO, and I was in a executive team um, discussion on talent, and we're making promotion decisions. And it was the CIO, the COO, the CHRO. So it was, all of the chiefs. And I was there advocating and supporting the IT division. And what was interesting was that um, one of the business partners, it was actually the head of sales, brought up a name of a woman in IT. And he said, I think she's sharp. She's great. We should be talking about her. Now, she was not in sales, she was in IT, but she figured out a way to make sure that this particular sponsor knew who she was and knew her work. So there are a lot of natural overlaps for the business partners in IT. So she was supporting the sales organization. So you see how you don't necessarily have to think in your vertical. Think in your horizontal and your kind of lattice, your lateral. Who do you have proximity to, where you can really start to align your work to theirs? You've got to understand what's important to that sponsor and figure out a way to make sure that you are helping them look great. You're helping their division look great. This is political, right? But this is not dirty, slimy politics. This is the way you get seen and you get known. Too many strong leaders in corporate think that their work is going to speak for themselves. And this breaks my heart, because we've got a lot of people who are incredibly talented and smart, and they are working their tails off, and they're expecting that somebody's going to notice at some point and they will get tapped for promotion. 98% of the time, that is not the way it works. So when we think about self-promotion, this is another thing that people get really grizzly about, because they don't want to toot their own horn, and that feels awkward. You don't have to toot your own horn. What you do have to do is position yourself so that the right people see what you're capable of, the right people feel the impact that you are giving, and that there is self-promotion. Okay. So the to do here is to identify who the right sponsor is, or sponsors are, for you in your organization, and figure out how you can get visibility to that. Okay. That's the sponsorship requirement, because I can't remember throughout my long career a time where we discussed promotions where there wasn't a senior level voice advocating for the person who was being tapped for promotion. The other thing I'll add here is that when a role becomes available, if somebody gets promoted and vacates a role, if they leave the organization and the role is vacated, normally the role is already, shadow filled, if you will, before it's even posted. Okay. So for those of you who are waiting for roles to get posted internally in your organization, you're already too late, because we are having these discussions about you and about the whole talent bench long before roles become available, that roles open up. So when a role is vacated, we already have a short list of who we're thinking about. Sometimes a short list is one person, and that's going to be that. I'll also tell you, from an HR compliance perspective, the role has to be posted for compliance reasons. So a lot of people are like, why the hell are they even posting it if they already knew who they were going to promote? And it's because it's a requirement. It's going to have to get posted. So you can't rely on that. This is why the sponsorship is so important. You want your name being discussed the way you want it being discussed long before the role is open. So getting sponsorship is critical. I got feedback earlier in my career when I was feeling stuck at that director level, and I had a manager who was great at feedback when I was lucky, because a lot of managers are really bad at giving constructive feedback. But the feedback I got from this manager is, people don't know you. And it was so clear. It was, I did not have sponsorship. He knew me. And he was speaking highly of me. But again, my boss didn't have control over a senior level promotion at that point. So he told me, "You are not known by the right people." Okay, so I had to go back to my own drawing board and figure out who are the right people that I've got to build relationships with, that I have to make sure see what I'm capable of doing. Okay, if you haven't been lucky enough to get that feedback, I'm giving it to you now. So get yourself visible and make sure you have a sponsor. So, if you want a deeper dive into any of this, you can feel free to head over to my website. It is www.thepromoted, all one word.com. I've got a lot of free resources over there, so have at it. There's also information about how we can work together if that is something that you would be interested in as well. So, I hope that this was helpful for somebody, and I always like to be actionable as well. I really don't like theory. I like really understanding what's actually happening in the organization and what can I do about it. And that is what I'm here to do for you, is to unveil it all and give you the roadmap. So next week we will cover number 2 of 7 of the 7 silent gatekeepers, the 7 tests that you're being run through and you don't even know about it. I look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out. I love hearing from you. Email me or send me a DM on either platform, and I'd be happy to connect. So, wishing you all a fabulous rest of your Thursday and a great end of the week. And I will see you soon.